Wait, y'all, I'm shaking. Because this just broke and I'm not even exaggerating. This is insane. Like, stop scrolling, sit down, and listen to this. Overnight, the internet decided to detonate itself after a wave of alleged resurfaced Epstein-adjacent clips started circulating, and somehow, someway, Kevin and Will got dragged straight into the eye of the storm. I know. I gasped too. Twitter is losing it right now. TikTok detectives are stitching videos at 3 a.m. The comments section is going feral. And here's the wild part. Sources close to the situation say Kevin privately told Will to run, not walk, after seeing what was trending. Not Kevin warning Will, like it's a disaster movie. I'm literally screaming. Before you ask, no, nothing has been confirmed. Yes, everything is allegedly. But the timing? The timeline? The way these clips dropped right after a major interview Will did last week. Bestie, connect the dots. Fans are pulling timestamps and pointing out deleted posts and claiming burner accounts went silent within hours. This is breaking the internet in real time. Hashtags are flying. Screenshots are everywhere. People are yelling, "How did we miss this?" While others are saying, "This is a reach." Meanwhile, reaction channels are posting back-to-back videos, and one insider claims lawyers are already involved. Career-ending implications are being whispered. Brand deals. Question mark. Reputations. On the line. And I haven't even told you the craziest part yet. Because what Kevin allegedly said next, and who else's name pops up, will blow your mind. But here's where it gets crazy. Before we go any further, you need the context, because without it, this whole situation makes zero sense. And trust me, the emotional history here is crucial. Bestie, sit down. Kevin and Will haven't just been co-workers, they've been industry family for years. We're talking private calls, inside jokes on award stages, our behind-the-scenes pep talks when cameras weren't rolling. Kevin has openly said in past interviews that Will was one of the first A-listers to really give him game. Not just about acting, but about surviving Hollywood without losing yourself. That matters now. A lot. Will, on the other hand, has always carried this almost untouchable image. The guy who made it from Philly to global icon without scandal sticking. Clean brand, family man energy, inspirational speeches. Even when things went left publicly in recent years, fans still framed him as complicated, not calculated. Emotions ran high every time his name trended because people felt like they knew him. Now here's where things get uncomfortable. According to longtime insiders, Kevin has always been more paranoid about Hollywood power structures. He jokes about it publicly, but behind closed doors, different story. Sources close to him say he's hyper-aware of how fast narratives flip, especially when old footage or photos resurface with zero context. Not Kevin being the one side-eyeing the industry early? Yeah. And Will? He's been on record saying he trusted the system, trusted relationships, trusted that truth eventually clears itself. That difference in mindset is key. Because when the Epstein documentaries, court releases, and leaked flight logs started trending again earlier this year, Kevin allegedly started distancing himself quietly from anything that even smelled controversial. Fans didn't notice at first, but TikTok detectives did. Let me explain. Back in late 2023, Kevin stopped liking certain throwback posts. He skipped 2 events he was expected at. He went radio silent on a charity gala he'd previously promoted heavily. At the time, people chalked it up to scheduling conflicts. Now, people are revisiting everything. The comments section is going feral, connecting dots. Meanwhile, Will was doing the opposite. Press runs, deep interviews, emotional openness, talking about healing, mistakes, legacy. Fans ate it up. But insiders say that visibility may have accidentally made him more vulnerable. Emotions ran high when one anonymous tip claimed he thought the storm had passed. And then there's the Epstein shadow. And let me be very clear, nothing has been proven, Nothing is confirmed. Sure, and everything you're hearing is allegedly. But the internet doesn't wait for court documents. It waits for clips. Old photos resurfaced. Not incriminating on their own. Just adjacent. Group settings. Events. Background faces. Stuff people didn't care about a decade ago. But now, with TikTok slowing footage down frame by frame, with Twitter screaming, "Why is no one talking about this?" Suddenly context doesn't matter anymore. This is where Kevin's warning reportedly comes in. Sources close to both camps say Kevin has seen this movie before. Not this exact storyline, but the pattern. The way public opinion turns first, facts later. The way silence gets weaponized. The way PR teams scramble while fans demand blood. Allegedly, Kevin told Will something along the lines of, "They're not asking questions. They're deciding already." Let that sink in. This wasn't a diss. This wasn't shade. This was fear. Real fear. Friends say Kevin sounded genuinely shaken, like he recognized the early signs of something spiraling beyond control. Not Kevin switching from comedian to crisis manager? And Will? According to people close to him, he didn't immediately panic. He reportedly believed transparency and time would settle things. That confidence, or maybe stubbornness, is now being debated heavily online. Fans are split. Some say staying visible is power. Others say it's walking straight into the fire. The family was left divided in the public eye, too. Old interviews with Jada resurfaced. Red Table Talk clips started trending again. People began rewriting history in real time, asking questions nobody asked before. Emotions ran high because suddenly everything felt connected, even if it wasn't. And here's the part nobody wants to admit out loud. This isn't just about guilt or innocence. It's about perception, optics, timing, and whether friendship is enough when the algorithm decides you're the villain of the week. Because right when Kevin allegedly warned Will, that's when the clip started going viral. But wait, because what surfaced next completely changed how people saw the warning. And it raised a question nobody was prepared to answer. Hold on, because this is where the story stops being internet chatter and starts feeling uncomfortably real. I'm talking timelines lining up, behavior changing, and people who never talk suddenly lawyering up. This is not goofy conspiracy stuff. This is pattern recognition, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. Here's what insiders say kicked everything into a higher gear. Late Sunday night, like after midnight, a cluster of short clips started circulating in private group chats before they ever hit public platforms. Not illegal, not graphic, not scandalous on their own. Just old event footage, charity galas, backstage moments, industry mixers. The kind of stuff nobody cared about 10 years ago. But here's the issue. The clips were being reposted with context stripped out and captions doing all the heavy lifting. Stuff like, "Why is nobody talking about this?" Or, "Look who's always in the same rooms." Or the worst one, "Patterns don't lie." Twitter was slow at first. TikTok, though? TikTok went into full detective mode. Fans started lining up dates, outfits, camera angles. Someone zoomed into a reflection in a glass door. Someone else matched a timestamp to an old interview quote. This is where things stopped being funny and started being stressful. Sources say this is the moment Kevin saw the writing on the wall. According to someone close to his camp, Kevin didn't even wait for the clips to go fully viral. He allegedly saw them in a private thread and immediately recognized the danger, not because of what they showed, but because of how the internet was framing them. One insider said, he's seen this exact playbook before. First comes curiosity, then certainty, then punishment. Not Kevin clocking the algorithm like a prosecutor. That's when the alleged warning happened. Not dramatic, not yelling, more like quiet urgency, the kind that makes your stomach drop. Kevin reportedly told Will something along the lines of, "They don't need proof anymore. They need a story that feels complete." Let's pause there, because that sentence explains everything. This wasn't about guilt. This wasn't about hiding. This was about how modern outrage works. Once people feel like they've solved a mystery together, they don't want new information. They want validation. And here's where the first real twist lands. Instead of pulling back, Will allegedly leaned forward. Sources say he chose visibility over silence. He didn't cancel appearances. He didn't disappear. He didn't issue a vague PR statement. He kept showing up. Interviews, smiles, long answers. Talking about growth, accountability, healing, life lessons. On paper, that sounds strong. That sounds honest. But the internet didn't read it that way. Fans started saying things like, "Why is he talking so much?" Or, "This feels like overcompensation." Or the most dangerous one, "He's nervous." The comments section went from confused to suspicious fast. And this is where Kevin's concern reportedly turned into frustration. Insiders claim Kevin felt like Will was underestimating how little nuance exists online once a narrative forms. One person described it as watching someone walk into traffic because they trust drivers to stop. Not this analogy being accurate. Behind the scenes, things started shifting quietly. A brand partnership that was supposed to be announced soon got pushed back. No statement, just delayed. A speaking engagement page quietly removed his name. No explanation. Fans noticed. Screenshots circulated. People started asking, "Why is this being scrubbed?" Then came the first public contradiction. A resurfaced interview clip from years ago, completely unrelated at the time, suddenly started trending with a new caption that reframed it entirely. The words hadn't changed. The meaning had. Fans stitched it with new footage, creating a narrative arc that didn't exist before, but felt convincing. Emotions ran high. People started picking sides without realizing they were doing it. Team, "This is nothing," or "Y'all are reaching," versus team, "Why is this all lining up?" The family was left divided in the public eye. Some defended aggressively. Others begged people to stop speculating. And every defense somehow made the accusations louder. Here's the detail that made insiders genuinely nervous. A burner account popped up. No name, no bio. Created recently. But the posts? Surgical, calm. No accusations, just questions, just timelines. Just interesting coincidences. The kind of account that doesn't scream clout chasing. The kind that feels intentional. People started whispering, "Who is this?" TikTok detectives noticed the account only posted between 1 a.m. and 4 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. They noticed it followed 0 celebrities but followed several journalists. They noticed it deleted posts after they hit a certain engagement threshold, like someone was tracking impact. Not a random troll, bestie. This is when the word lawyers started floating around. According to 2 separate sources, calls were made. Not threats, not demands, just inquiries. Quiet ones. Where did this come from? Who's amplifying it? How do we slow this down without making it worse? Kevin allegedly was furious at this point. Not at Will, but at the situation. One insider said he kept repeating, "This is how it starts. This is exactly how it starts." And then, plot twist that nobody expected, Kevin himself started getting dragged into the narrative. Someone pulled an old photo. Innocent. Group setting. But suddenly the captions changed. "Why is he there too?" The comments turned nasty. Kevin's name started trending alongside Will's. That's when the warning reportedly became a line in the sand. Sources say Kevin told Will he was stepping back publicly. Not because he didn't care, but because proximity was now a liability. Not friendship becoming collateral damage. Fans noticed immediately. Why hasn't Kevin said anything? Why did he unlike that post? Why did he skip that event? The silence got interpreted as distance. The distance got interpreted as guilt by association. And the algorithm. It loved every second of it. And right when it felt like things couldn't get more intense, when the internet was fully locked in, When reactions were at a boiling point, a new clip surfaced that changed the tone of the entire conversation. Not because it proved anything, but because of who leaked it and why. And that's the moment everyone realized this wasn't random anymore. But here's where it gets crazy. This is where everything shifts from viral spiral to, oh, this is being managed behind the scenes. And no, not in a cartoon villain way. In a very real, very Hollywood, very quiet power way. Or because the clip that surfaced next, it didn't come from a fan page. It didn't come from TikTok detectives. It didn't even come from Twitter. It came from a private archive. According to multiple insiders, the video was uploaded for less than 20 minutes before disappearing. No watermark, no commentary, just raw footage from an old industry event. Clean audio, multiple angles. That alone made people freeze. Fans are shocked because random leaks are usually messy. This one was surgical. The clip didn't show anything illegal. Let's be very clear. No crimes, no misconduct, nothing explicit. What it showed was proximity, familiarity, comfort. People laughing together who, years later, you'd never expect to see in the same room again. And in the current climate, that's enough to send the internet into a frenzy. The comments section went dead silent for about 5 minutes. Then it exploded. This doesn't look accidental. Why is this footage so clean? Who even had access to this? Those were the top comments. Not accusations, but questions. And questions are more dangerous than statements. Here's why insiders say this mattered so much. That footage wasn't public-facing material. It wasn't press. It wasn't paparazzi. It was the kind of thing only insiders, archivists, or legal teams would have access to. Or which immediately sparked a new theory. This wasn't a leak for clout. It was a pressure move. Not a hit piece. Not a call-out. A test. Sources close to the situation say Kevin saw the clip within minutes of it going live and immediately knew this wasn't about Will anymore. This was about control of narrative. One insider described Kevin's reaction as ice cold, not panic, calculation. And here's where the second major twist hits. Kevin allegedly reached out again, but this time, the message wasn't emotional. It was strategic, short, direct. Something along the lines of, they're signaling, not accusing. Let that sink in, because in Hollywood, signals matter more than statements. Around the same time, journalists started receiving anonymous tips. Not tips accusing anyone of wrongdoing, but tips suggesting context pieces. Background explainers. Here's how to interpret what you're seeing. Not journalists being gently guided instead of fed a scandal. Meanwhile, TPR teams went silent. No defensive statements, no denials, no "we categorically reject" language. That silence was loud. Fans are shocked because silence usually means either there's nothing to respond to or everything to lose by responding. Then came the quiet cancellations. One event reshuffled its guest list. Another switched hosts. No announcements, just updates on websites. Screenshots spread instantly. Why did this change? The internet noticed. It always does. At this point, Will's visibility strategy reportedly shifted. Fewer interviews, shorter appearances, more controlled environments. Kevin, meanwhile, went fully off-grid. No posts, no likes, no comments. For a man who lives on social media, that was screaming. Insiders say this wasn't fear, it was containment. And here's the thing nobody wants to say out loud. Nothing actually happened. No charges, no expose, no confirmation. But the threat of narrative was enough to start rearranging schedules, alliances, and behavior. That's how power works at that level. Fans started arguing harder than ever. One video proves nothing. But why are they moving like this? Why is everyone being so careful all of a sudden? The family was left divided in the public eye, not just literal families, But fan families, cultural families, entire communities split between leave them alone and why is this so coordinated? Then, and this is key, the burner account went quiet. No goodbye post, no final drop, or just silence. Which insiders say means one of two things. Either the goal was achieved, or someone told them to stop. And that is when a new rumour started circulating. One that hasn't hit mainstream yet, but is being whispered in industry circles. Allegedly, an NDA was referenced, not broken, referenced, as a reminder, as a boundary, as a way of saying, let's not pretend we don't all know how this works. Not ND, as entering the chat, now? At this point, and Kevin's warning started looking less like panic and more like foresight, he wasn't running from guilt. He was running from collateral damage, from a story that didn't need facts to burn careers, only momentum. And just when the internet thought the wave had peaked, something happened that completely flipped public sympathy and forced people to ask whether Will was being targeted unfairly. Because someone else's name entered the conversation, someone nobody expected. And once that happened, the entire narrative cracked wide open. But here's where it gets crazier. Late the next evening, while everyone was still refreshing timelines waiting for the big exposé that never came, a completely different celebrity's name started trending in the same threads. Not because of accusation, but because of contrast. People were suddenly asking, why is he being dragged but this person never gets mentioned? Why do the rules change depending on who we're talking about? Who decides which proximity matters? And that question changed everything. The comments section tone shifted from outrage to suspicion. Fans are shocked because once people start questioning selective scrutiny, the mob energy collapses. TikTok videos popped up comparing timelines, event photos, and industry connections. Not to accuse, but to highlight inconsistency. The vibe went from, we caught something, to, wait, are we being steered? This is where insiders say Kevin's warning made even more sense, because according to sources, Kevin wasn't afraid of exposure. He was afraid of misdirection. The kind where one narrative gets amplified to protect another. The kind where public outrage is used like a flashlight pointed very deliberately in one direction. And here's the second major twist that made industry people sit up straight. A respected journalist, not a gossip blogger, not a reaction channel, quietly tweeted and deleted a single sentence. Be careful confusing proximity with participation. It was up for less than 10 minutes. Screenshots went everywhere. Fans lost it. Because why would someone with credibility step in like that unless they were seeing the same manipulation? The tweet didn't defend anyone. It didn't accuse anyone. It simply warned the audience, and that warning hit hard. Immediately, reaction channels switched tone. Some deleted earlier videos, others added disclaimers. We're not saying anything happened, just asking questions, became the new refrain. Emotions ran high because people realized how fast they'd been pushed towards certainty without evidence. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, behavior changed again. Insiders say Will's team stopped reacting entirely, not out of fear but confidence. The message internally shifted to, let it burn out. Kevin, on the other hand, allegedly felt vindicated. One source described it as, he knew the wave would crest once people noticed the inconsistencies. And notice they did. Fans started calling out accounts that had aggressively pushed the narrative early on. Old posts were pulled, timelines scrubbed. One popular account went private overnight. Another disabled comments. Not the cleanup phase. Starting? And then came the quiet confirmation that something was happening, just not what people thought. 2 brand partners reactivated campaigns that had been paused. No announcement, just subtle reappearances. That told insiders everything. Brands don't come back unless risk assessments change. At the same time, a legal expert stitched a viral TikTok explaining why Epstein-related adjacency narratives are often misleading and legally dangerous. The video hit millions. The comments flipped again. Why didn't anyone say this sooner? This whole thing feels engineered. Who benefits from this distraction? That last question stuck, because once people started asking who benefits, the spotlight moved away from Will and toward the machinery behind viral outrage itself. Kevin's role in all of this began to look different too. Not cowardly, not disloyal, strategic, protective. People started saying, he wasn't warning Will to run because he was guilty. He was warning him because the fire wasn't real, but the smoke was. Not that reframe making sense. The family, cultural, fan, industry was left divided again, but this time along different lines. Not Team A versus Team B. It was believe everything versus slow down. And that's a much more dangerous split because it challenges how people consume information. Here's the detail that sealed it for insiders. The private archive clip. It never resurfaced, not reposted, not mirrored, not leaked again. In internet terms, that's weird. Stuff doesn't just vanish unless someone with leverage wants it gone, or wants people to remember it without replaying it. That's when whispers of a behind-the-scenes agreement started circulating. Not a settlement, not a threat, just a mutual understanding that escalation helped nobody. Oh, and just when it felt like the storm was passing, when the outrage fatigue set in, someone dropped a final breadcrumb. A comment from a verified account with industry ties. This wasn't about truth. It was about timing. No explanation, no follow-up. The internet froze. Because timing implies intent. And intent implies planning. So now the question isn't, did something happen? It's, why did this happen now? And once people started asking that, they realized the scariest possibility of all. What if this wasn't a scandal, but a test run? What if someone wanted to see how fast they could bend public opinion without proof? And if that's true, then the next target might already be lined up. But here's where it gets absolutely unsettling. Y'all, this is where the emotional fallout hit. And it hit hard. Not in a flashy trending for fun way, in a quiet, human, stomach-sinking way that made even the loudest commentators pause. Because once the narrative cracked, people started realizing real lives were getting dragged through a machine that doesn't care about nuance. Fans who had been posting non-stop suddenly started deleting tweets. You could feel the tone shift. The comments section went from lock him up energy to, wait, what if we went too far? And that pivot? That's rare. That only happens when people feel it in their gut that something isn't sitting right. According to insiders, this was the moment families got involved emotionally. Or not publicly, privately. Calls were made, not to fight, not to threaten, but to check in, to ask, are you okay? To remind people that headlines don't raise kids and timelines don't protect mental health. The family was left divided in the public eye, but behind the scenes. The priority was survival, not optics. Will, according to people close to him, felt the whiplash deeply. One day you're being dissected by strangers who think they know your entire life from clips and captions. So the next day those same people are saying, we never said he did anything. Emotions ran high because that kind of reversal doesn't erase the damage. It just proves how fast trust can be broken. Kevin, meanwhile, was reportedly dealing with a different emotional load. Not fear, guilt. Not because he warned his friend, but because he knew the warning wouldn't stop the wave, only prepare for it. One insider described it as watching a car crash in slow motion and still not being able to stop it. That kind of helplessness messes with you. Fans started noticing subtle things. Kevin laughing less online, Will appearing more guarded in appearances. Not sad, cautious. The kind of caution that comes from realizing how little control you actually have once the algorithm locks onto a story. Emotions ran high because people could see the shift even without statements. And then came the backlash to the backlash. Creators who had gone hardest early on started getting called out. Old videos resurfaced with captions like, "You owe an apology." Some doubled down, others went quiet. One even posted a now-deleted message saying, "I didn't think people would take it this far." Too late. The comments turned brutal, not toward Will, but toward the machine itself. Why do we do this? Why do we need villains? Why does proximity equal guilt now? That self-awareness phase is rare, and it doesn't last long. But while it was here, it was loud. Brands took notice too, not just of the accusations, but of the volatility. According to marketing insiders, the bigger concern wasn't scandal, it was unpredictability. One day, outrage. Next day, regret. That kind of emotional swing scares corporations more than controversy. And when brands get scared, and they freeze. That's why the pauses mattered. That's why the quiet reactivations mattered even more, because it signaled a recalibration. A collective, let's slow this down. Still, the emotional damage didn't rewind. Will's supporters felt betrayed by how easily the internet flipped. Kevin's supporters felt vindicated but frustrated. Neutral observers felt manipulated. The family was left divided not by loyalty but by exhaustion. Everyone was tired of yelling, tired of defending, tired of explaining that silence doesn't equal guilt and caution doesn't equal confession. Here's the part nobody wants to say out loud. Even when a storm passes, the ground doesn't go back to normal. Trust erodes, relationships strain, future moves get calculated differently. People stop showing up as freely, they stop laughing as loud, they stop assuming good faith. And that's the real cost of viral outrage, not cancellation, but contraction. According to one industry insider, this situation became a case study almost overnight. Not what happened, but how it happened. How fast a narrative formed, how little evidence it needed, how quickly even smart people got swept up. Emotions ran high because nobody wants to admit they could be next. Fans started saying things like, "This could have been anybody." And that's when the fear set in. Because if proximity plus timing plus vibes is enough to trigger a spiral, then no amount of clean living protects you. Only luck does. And luck runs out. As the noise finally began to die down, one thing was clear. This wasn't a win for anyone. Not for outrage culture, not for reaction channels, not for fans, and definitely not for the people at the center of it. But just when it felt like the lesson had been learned, when people started saying, "Let's do better," a final quiet development surfaced that suggested this whole episode wasn't just chaos. It might have been a dry run. See, because insiders are now whispering that what happened here is being studied. By platforms, by PR firms, by people who want to understand exactly how fast a narrative can be engineered and dismantled. And if that's true, then what comes next won't be louder. It'll be cleaner and a lot harder to stop. But here's where it gets truly disturbing, because this is the moment that made insiders stop texting and start calling. Not panicked calls, not angry ones. The kind of quiet, measured calls that only happen when something structural clicks into place. Here's the final twist nobody was ready for. The outrage didn't die because people suddenly became kinder. It didn't fade because the truth came out. It slowed because the input stopped. No new clips, no new questions, no fresh breadcrumbs. And that's not how the internet works by accident. Multiple sources now say the real takeaway wasn't about Will at all. It was about how fast a narrative could be built, redirected, and cooled without ever issuing a statement. No press conference, no denial, no apology tour. Just timing, silence, and selective visibility. That's what shook people. One insider put it bluntly. This showed everyone how little content you actually need to move millions. Think about that. A handful of old videos, a burner account asking innocent questions, strategic silence, a pause in brand activity, then a subtle return. No receipts, no proof, just vibes, pacing, and amplification, the way the internet filled in the blanks on its own. That's the scary part. Because once people realized that, the conversation changed completely. Creators started saying things like, "If this was intentional, it worked." Others said, "If this wasn't intentional, that's even worse." And that's where the cliffhanger lives. According to two separate industry contacts, there was a closed-door discussion shortly after the peak of the chaos. Not about blame, about risk modeling. About how platforms reward escalation, how audiences respond to ambiguity, and how easily moral outrage can be guided without ever crossing legal lines. One phrase keeps coming up from those conversations: controlled ambiguity. Not that term existing and fitting perfectly. Controlled ambiguity means never lying, never accusing, never confirming, just letting people assume. It's cleaner than misinformation, harder to counter, and almost impossible to call out without sounding defensive. This is why Kevin's warning matters so much in hindsight. He wasn't saying run because you're guilty. He was saying run because the system doesn't need guilt anymore. And here's the detail that pushed this from unsettling to chilling. A source claims a different high-profile name was quietly tested in the same way weeks earlier. But the reaction didn't scale, so it was dropped. No one noticed. That test failed. This one didn't. Let that sit with you. If that's true, then this wasn't chaos. It was calibration. People started asking, who decides which stories get oxygen? Who decides when they stop? And how many narratives are experiments before they're scandals? Will's situation didn't end with a resolution. It ended with a lesson. One that PR teams, platforms, and creators are absolutely studying right now. Because if perception can be bent this efficiently, the next situation won't look like outrage. It'll look like concern. It'll look reasonable. It'll look responsible. And by the time anyone asks for proof, the conclusion will already be locked in. That's why the silence at the end felt so final. Not relief, not victory, acceptance. The machine did what it does. Then it moved on. Kevin stepping back now reads like survival, not fear. Will staying composed now reads like endurance, not avoidance. And the audience? The audience is left with the uncomfortable realization that participation doesn't require intention anymore. Just attention. So here's the cliffhanger you can't ignore. If this really was a test, if this really showed how fast public opinion can be steered without facts, if this really proved that timing beats truth online, then the next time it happens, you won't even recognize it as drama. You'll recognize it as something feels off, and by then, it'll already be working. All right, before you scroll, before you forget this, before the timeline refreshes and moves on to the next scandal, I need you locked in right here. Because this story doesn't end with Will, it doesn't end with Kevin, and it definitely doesn't end with this week's headlines. This is bigger than celebrity drama. If everything you just heard made you uncomfortable, good. That means you felt it too. The speed, the certainty, the way people went from curiosity to judgment without proof, the way silence was interpreted as guilt, the way narratives formed faster than facts. Fans are shocked because once you see how easily this machine moves, you realize nobody is immune. Not celebrities, not creators, not regular people who just get caught in the wrong clip at the wrong time. So I need to know where you stand. Do you think Kevin was right to warn Will to step back and protect himself? Or do you think staying visible was the smarter move? Was this situation organic outrage? Or something far more calculated? And be honest, did you feel your opinion shifting as the timeline changed? Drop it in the comments. Don't be shy. This conversation matters. And if you're still here, do me a favor, smash that like button so more people actually see this breakdown before it gets buried. Subscribe and turn on notifications because this story is not over. Insiders are still whispering, reaction channels are still watching, and I promise you, the next situation is already forming somewhere else. If you want updates I can't fully break down here, check the community tab and follow the socials linked below. I'm posting context, screenshots, and timeline notes there while this continues to unfold. Share this with someone who lives on the internet and thinks they can always tell what's real. Because this story proves how slippery that line has become. And remember this the next time a name starts trending overnight and everyone suddenly knows the truth. Ask who benefits. Ask why now. And ask what you're being pushed to feel before you're shown anything real. Stay sharp, stay skeptical. I'll see you in the comments, because this conversation is just getting started.